Yo, what's up, class? It's your boy Nitrostorm here. Welcome back to Snowbreak Containment Zone. So, we are now moving on to class 2. This one's gonna be a pretty long one, so I'll have timestamps and all that. As you saw from the thumbnail, we have a lot of these different terms that you might be unfamiliar with or just wanting to know exactly what they do. Well, I used basically 100% of my brain to do this and prepare this class for you, so hopefully this will help you out. Now, without further ado, before we actually start, I just like to preface with the terms that I'm going to be mentioning throughout this video. When I say base stats, I mean flat stats you have before percentage boosts. So as you can see, I've highlighted it in red on the basic stat section. And total stats equals flat stats you have after percentage boosts, which I've highlighted in green. Okay. Now, first things first, these are going to be the stats that we're going to be covering today. So quite a lot of stuff, right? And we're mainly going to be taking a look at these. So these highlighted in red are the most important stats to worry about, and I'm going to be talking to you about this in further detail. But for the time being, I'll quickly go over the stuff here which I've highlighted in purple. So for the weapon attributes, you have rate of fire, normally measured in rounds per minute, right? So if rate of fire is 40, then if you were to continuously shoot for 1 minute, then the amount of bullets you would have shot with this gun in particular would be 40 rounds. Damage type, we've covered this in class 1. We have 5 different damage types with kinetic, thermal, chaos, frost, and thunder or lightning, right? All weapons have one of those kinds of damage types. Max range depends on the weapon, right? After this max range, you would deal basically no more damage, 0 damage, so you'd have to get closer. And at max range, their max range that's listed here, that's where you'll be doing minimum damage. So their best zone for damage would be normally lower than the max range. Now for ammo capacity, pretty obvious stuff, how many rounds you can shoot until you have to reload. Reload speed, obviously again pretty obvious, the amount of seconds it will take for you to fully reload your gun. Moving on to the other side here, we have stamina. Everyone has 200 stamina. I'm not sure if there's any stamina increasing stuff yet, but this is basically the gauge that gets used up whenever you sprint or you dodge. Kinetic, thermal, frost, electrical, and chaos resistance. Pretty straightforward again. If you have a certain percentage in resistance, whatever kind of that specific damage you take, the resistance will reduce it by the amount in percentage, I believe. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's go back to focusing on the important stats. So be sure to take notes or pause the video just to understand it further if you want. But let's get right into it, starting off with the basic stats. So all the stats that you see here is a total of your character base stats plus your logistic stats plus your weapon stats, right? All these three contribute to your basic stats, right? And to go into further detail so you fully understand, so the logistic, that is the right logistic piece, has a defense percentage increase for their main stats, right? Which, as you can see, contributes to the 20% defense that I have on the basic stats here. And this is my only source of defense percent. Now, to further go into detail into this, I've brought the logistics section here for us here. As you can see, logistics not only boosts percentage stats, but they also boost your base stats. You can see up here. As you can see here, I've shown you some differences here. So max HP plus 3000 across my logistics contributes to my basic value, my base max HP. And if I were to remove the 3000 max HP, as you can see, it removes 3000 base max HP, meaning the amount of HP I've lost doing this is actually more than 3000 and closer to 3500 HP with the percentage added on, as you can see right there. Now obviously for weapons, attack is added to the base stats, as you can see right here, right? The difference in attack that we have here, so it's 447. Do the math here. 1658 minus 1211 is obviously 447. But wait, look at this. Why did the HP and defense change even though the only thing I changed is the weapon? Well, they both have different compatibility, right? That's why I've checked. And from the looks of it, the compatibility, even if there were two different compatibilities on the right hand side, 88.5% and 117.82%, these both output the same amount of defense and max HP, whereas this compatibility, which I have at 143.19%, gave a tiny bit more boost in stats. And this is where my first theory comes in for my compatibility theory. Compatibility works in thresholds, so once you reach a breakpoint, base stats will increase. I've added the asterisk there. I'll go into further detail in a moment, but that's basically my theory. So there's certain thresholds, and once you reach a certain threshold in compatibility, you'll get a little bonus in base stats. Now, more to compatibility. Damage is also affected by compatibility. TLDR higher equals more damage, even if, when comparing the same attack, high compatibility equals more damage. Again, more to compatibility. Here's my math proof that it works. That it is what I say it is. I get the ratio between the two compatibilities here with guns that have the same attack, same weapon type, of course. As you can see, the ratio that I got here is 1.1879 for 1117, and then I use these values, so I do 484 damage from the left weapon, multiply by the ratio equals the damage value of the weapon on the right hand side. You can do this math yourself, trust me, it adds up. Now let's move on to weapon substats. For weapon substats, they can go from either defense, attack, max HP percentage, or alignment index. And these are additive to the character and weapon stats, which I've highlighted in red here. This one's pretty straightforward. Now, what is this? So we've moved on now, right, to crit damage, because weapons have a base crit damage, and and operatives have their own stat called Crit DMG Amplifier. Now, as you can see here, base crit damage also changes depending on the weapon. It's not always 100%. It can be 60%, and it can actually even be lower. And the Crit DMG Amplifier, which I've mentioned, is a multiplier to weapon crit damage. But in what way, right? We don't know that yet. That's why I've tested just for you if it's additive or multiplicative. So I've used two weapons, right? I've used before I talk about this, if you look at the top right, one of my friends on Discord posted this, right? This is like the chart of different enemy types and their strengths and weaknesses, and their weaknesses to certain elements. I'm not sure where this is from. If this is yours, do let me know down in the comments below. But I used this as reference, and I used a electric and a chaos weapon for this comparison to ensure that whatever enemy I face, their damage is going to be consistent, as in either both of the damages aren't boosted or they are both boosted equally. Now, as you can see here, I have the 60% crit damage base for the weapon on the left side, both snipers by the way, and crit damage 100% on the right hand side. So to ensure that this was a fair test, I made sure that everything is the same except for Crit Damage Amplifier. And obviously, in order for me to do this test, I need to be able to crit, and so I needed to get crit rate, and the way that you can get crit rate for now is to get shooting crit rate as a talent on your logistics. And I managed to get 8.4%, still pretty low, so you know I took some tries to get this. But in any case, if you take a look at the stats, as you can see, these are the results that I have obtained in terms of damage values. Since there's a range of numbers, I took the lowest and the highest damage that was able to record during my research, and I've placed it here. Now, I did some more math just to confirm whether it's additive or multiplicative, and the first thing that I did is pretty simple. So the first one, I used the 574 damage, right? And I used the 100% crit damage multiplier to get 1148, right? Which makes sense. As you can see, there's 1148 on my normal crit. And then if we go to the second test with the crit damage amplifier, I used the 585 damage for this math equation. So I did 585 plus 585 with the 107.2% crit damage in total. Because of the crit damage amplifier, I get 1212.12, which kind of goes in line with my max damage on critical with crit that's amplified. Now let's move on to the 60% crit damage section. As you can see, I used the minimum non-crit for both equations. So I first did the normal way with no crit damage amplifier, 484 plus 484 with 60% crit damage equals 774.4, which again in lines with the 775 lowest crit that I've obtained without amplifier. Now let's do crit amplifier. I've tried the same strat here, this time both additive, right? I tried additive again this time here for amplified crit damage for 60%. I do 484 plus 484 multiplied by 67.2%, and I obtained a value that is way above the range that I got in game. So let's go into further detail with this. So we'll take this into account and try a different way. So instead of adding crit damage and crit damage amplifier, I instead multiplied the crit damage, the base crit damage from the weapon, with the amplified crit damage stat, and I ended up getting 64.32. Now I use this value to the second equation that failed, and I obtained 795.3088, which, we go back here, goes in line with the crit amplified stat. Now, to explain all of this, this is my answer. The answer, if it's additive or multiplicative, it's multiplicative, kind of. Here's my explanation for this. Crit damage amplifier is a stat that amplifies base crit damage by a certain percent before a critical hit occurs. So here's an example using stats from in the game. So 60% crit damage multiplied by the crit damage amplifier equals 64.32% effective crit damage in battle, and I added a math equation version below here in case this part was a little bit confusing. So yeah, it is multiplicative, but in a different way. Essentially, it's not as broken as it is. I mean, it's not as broken as you thought it was, perhaps. Now, we're nearly there. If you're still watching right now, thank you for watching. We're nearly done. You know, you're doing great. By this point, you must feel much better now about what these stats mean, but we still got a few things left to go. As you can see, you've still got S and skill and ultimate energy recovery, as well as skill haste and auxiliary unit strength. And here are some examples of where you can obtain them. For the time being, the only way to get these stats are from logistics and logistic talents. And yes, these are the default stats that you get per character: 100% with 0 skill haste and 1 S energy recovery and 0% auxiliary unit strength. So these are the default stats you get when a character doesn't have anything equipped. Now, here's my assumption for auxiliary unit strength. This stat boosts HP, attack, and maybe defense if they're mentioned on the skill. Here's what I mean. So let's take Chen Xing, for example. Her standard skill summons Thunder Soldier, which has an attack multiplier. So each Thunder Soldier has 100% of Chen Xing's attack, as well as 50% of Chen Xing's max HP. Now, auxiliary unit strength stat would boost the amount of attack and HP the Thunder Soldier gets from Chen Xing. Now, if you take a look at Chen Xing's support skill, it only talks about the max HP of this auxiliary unit. So I would believe that the auxiliary unit strength would only boost the amount of HP that this auxiliary unit gets from Chen Xing. Now, here are some of my guesses in terms of the defense stat. Because defense stat is not mentioned, but maybe using... so because defense stat's not mentioned, I thought that it might be using the operator's total defense in a 1-to-1 ratio. And from the asterisk from earlier, the defense stat might not actually be boosted by auxiliary unit strength, but I believe that this is unlikely, and I think that it is being boosted. But then again, I honestly don't know about the defense stat when it comes to auxiliary unit strength. So if you do know, do let me know. But this is my best guess when it comes to the defense stat. Now, let's move on to the nearly done here. So let's move on to Skill Haste this time. So Skill Haste can reduce the cooldown of the operative's skills. So this actually includes standard, support, and ultimate skill. Now this stat is obtained as a flat stat, but how does it work? Well, again, I used 100% of my brain to find out just for you. So I did some testing. As you can see, I managed to get 51.7 skill haste on a character, and for this example, I'm going to be using Life Wild Hunt. Here are the 3 skills with their default cooldowns. And here are the results of that testing. As you can see, Frost Wolves gets a 3.2 seconds cooldown instead of 5. Wolf's Fang gets a 16.5 second cooldown instead of 25. And Eternal Blizzard Eternal Hunt gets a 52.6 second cooldown instead of 80. So what does this all mean? Well, I did some math yet again, and as you can see from the results here, they do coincide with the amount of skill haste that I have obtained. As you can see, they are all very close to the 51.7 skill haste value, which is more than enough for me to conclude this with a TLDR. If you have 100 skill haste, that equals 50% cooldown to all your skills. You can use this to translate how much cooldown you'll get depending on how much skill haste you have, with 100 skill haste equals 50% cooldown as your baseline. Alright, finally, we're on our last bit here. Again, congratulations for staying with me. Now, energy recovery. It splits up into ultimate energy and skill energy recovery. Again, the only way to get this for now is through the talents of your logistics. So again, I did some more research just for you. So for these 3 weapons at least, I measured the amount of ultimate energy recovery per shot. So for pistols, there are 2 different weapons, right? There's one that has high fire rate that you can just hold left click and it'll continue shooting. And there's the other type of pistol with a low fire rate where you have to keep on manually shooting every shot. And as you can see, there's a difference in ultimate energy recovery. The high fire rate ranges between 0 and 1, a bit of RNG, but mostly you get 1. And then for the normal pistol, the one you normally click, you get between 2 and 3. Now, for shotguns, you have low fire rate and high fire rate, but there's 3 different guns here. So for the high fire rate shotgun with the highest fire rate, you get between 0 to 3. The middle one, you get between 1 to 3, but 0 if not all of them hit. Unfortunately, there is an error here. Alright, so apologies for that. I did fix it. So the pistol with low fire rate is actually between 1 to 2 per shot. And the shotgun with low fire rate, it's the shotgun where it only has 1 ammo capacity, so you have to reload every shot. That gives you between 2 and 3, 1 if you don't hit all of them. Now moving on to the sniper rifle, the one with high fire rate, normally you can stay in scope and keep shooting. This gives you a consistent 3 U energy per shot, whilst the slower fire rate sniper rifle where you shoot in scope and then you have to get out of scope to load in the next bullet, the next round, this gives you a range between 3 to 5, mostly 4 and above. Now for submachine guns and assault rifles, well, they have a lot of bullets, so I mainly went for the ultimate energy recovery per mag, assuming you hit every shot. So submachine guns have different rate of fire, right? And with all 45 ammo, they range between 14 to 19, so basically around the same. So at least for submachine guns, there's a little bit of variation, but you could say the lower the fire rate, the higher chance you can get higher energy per mag. And then similar case for assault rifle, the higher the fire rate, the slightly lower chance, the slightly higher chance to get less ultimate energy per mag. Now let's summarize the actual stat itself. Now what U energy recovery percentage does, it adds up, it's a flat stat, well not flat stat, but it's an additive stat which will increase the amount of energy you get when you obtain energy from shooting, meaning it is most noticeable when shooting with sniper rifles. Now we're moving on to the last part of our class. Hopefully by this point you're feeling very confident in how everything works, but let's just move on to the last bit here. So we now have skill energy recovery, and this is the approximate recovery per second. So everyone has a basis of 1, so approximately 1 S energy per second. And for example, in this case, we have a logistic with a talent of S energy recovery bonus by 11.3%. The S energy recovery stat after equipping this logistic becomes 1.11. So essentially, it's a percentage of 1 increase. And with this, with 1.11 S energy recovery, that is approximately 1.11 S energy per second. And that's pretty much it. It was a pretty long video, very fully detailed. Again, as I've mentioned, all of this will be timestamped, and if you have any questions, do let me know down in the comments below. But outside of that, it took me a while to make all of this for you, so for those that watched it, well, hopefully you consider this a gem or a goated video, and you can appreciate my teaching as well. You don't have to ask any questions down in the comments below. If you want more nice videos around Snowbreak Containment Zone or anything in general, stay tuned, subscribe and all that good stuff. In any case, thank you all for watching. Again, now that you've finished this class, you are now fully fledged, you could say intellectuals when it comes to not only logistics lingo, but now also operator stats. In any case, it's been your boy Nitrostorm. I'll see you guys in the next stream or video. Peace.